yes. Now I imagine someone will click this video thinking I knew Spoon was going to grift at some point, the shifty-eyed wanker that he is, and here he is trying to justify it. If that's the case, how dare you? Coming on at 20k over here, I think I've earned a reputation for at least not being full of BS. Unlike some other people, but anyway. Speaking of said other people though, because a good chunk of my content is me just throwing out random ideas that pop into my head. Grifting, as I'm sure many of you are well aware, refers to the act of someone saying or doing things they don't actually believe in for money and attention. Now, frankly, many people do this, it's called a job. And for a particular class of gimps known as politicians, that objectively is their job. Frankly, the halls of government is full of dishonesty, never mind social media, but anyway. Like I said before, much like politicians, content creators have next to no mobility when it comes to shifting positions without being accused of grifting. About the only way you can even try is to make your journey from position A to B as public as possible to give the impression your move is sincere and learned. Though if your shift just happens to align with a position that will land you more dosh and attention, that's gonna be a tough sell. You're always going to find a handful who will never believe it's a genuine shift because that is what you're ultimately trying to do, sell a shift. Again, tough sell. Fortunately, my position is already well outside the current sphere and I detest the politics of the regime, so I'm in no danger of that accusation. Prime example that I've used though many a time is Emma Vagelin from Majority Report. Her failing shtick has been on public display for quite some time now, and it's blown up in her face more often than a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. Especially after she was on with the Beanie Boy, like, oof, that was a rough ride. And her boss Sam Cedar is even worse. Though with him, he doesn't quite get dusted up as often as Emma, because rarely does he ever talk with people outside of his little niche sphere. He did some time ago with Patrick Bet-Davis on Valuetainment, and my good god. By the end of that episode, the man's positions were holier than Swiss cheese found at the Vatican. The fact that these people still have an audience at all, never mind after they got their asses handed to them with basic realities of markets and human psychology, should tell you people do not learn with information, nor do people think coherently, because people are far more driven by religious-like thinking of potential humanity rather than the realities of how humans actually function. Especially the secular human types, they all basically believe in some form of social engineering to some degree. But I've used Emma as an example quite a bit because, very evidently, she believes in absolutely nothing and she has no conviction in anything whatsoever. She'll be a feminist by Monday and then come Friday, she'll be all in on the rainbow hippies. Like she's got the political positions of a mind that's been dunked in a bucket of melted starburst. Put her in the Third Reich, she would be a staunch supporter of the regime, big fan of the SS. I mean, come on, do you think this woman would ever advocate for her politics in, say, an Islamic theocracy? No. Aside from the fact that she would get arrested and probably lashed for that, there's no social currency in advocating for her politics outside of the West. Hell, you could even see examples of this inside the West. Remember the Queers for Palestine banners that made absolutely no sense whatsoever? Yeah, case in point, something like that. But note I said grifters, not grifting, the plural part being the important variable here, and in two ways. On the one hand, an individual basis, yeah, you can tell next to nothing about the grifters. Peddling the talking points, yeah, who cares? On that level, you're just looking for personality, really, not the viewpoints because they're all saying the same thing, essentially. There's no sincerity or authenticity there. But in groups, they can be potentially useful. Ignore the grifters as individuals because they don't matter anyway, rather look at the regime overall. Imagine the regime is surrounded by magnets, and look at the direction the masses are being pulled in. Now, it's natural for people to want money and attention, that's fairly normal, and people want to give money and attention to things they believe are authentic and real. It doesn't matter if they actually are, it's only the belief that matters. And you can sort of see where I'm going with this, follow the money. Grifters alone matter bugger all, but the viewing figures, their audience size and retention, those can serve as useful metrics to see where the wind is blowing, especially in the counterculture format, because everyone knows leftism is piss-poor regime propaganda. It sucks, it's hated, it's why it loses money wherever it goes, it's a deadly virus. Quite literally if you happen to work in aviation. So it's good to keep an eye on those who make the shift, not because they want money, clout, and all the rest of the jazz, but rather what they're being pulled by is becoming popular. Now sure, you can lament their branding and behavior as perhaps sullying a faction you deem as far too prim and proper for them, but we're not concerned here with principles, only influence and what has the power to pull, which is also the other thing to keep in mind, the social currency. I don't think anyone with sense would argue against the notion that the dumb stuff people believe in nowadays is a product of the regime and its politics, which would also lead one to another sobering conclusion. The fickleness with which people cling to is not born of any genuine conviction or belief in anything. No, it's a product of the environment. Ergo, remove the social currency, change the environment, perhaps impose some kind of heavy-handed penalty for defiance. I'm not suggesting this needs to be done by the state necessarily. Shaming of the social variety can be just as effective. But the bottom line is the regime still has to go. Cheers for watching, and once again, I apologize for nothing.